Saturday videos. I don't work as hard as I used to on the weekend because I'm not a fucking idiot anymore. So I take it easier and I get the work done earlier, and then I have not too much done during the rest of the day. That's one of the reasons gave up working the whole weekend. It was starting to kill me, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So you get more videos out of me these days because I'm not working as hard as I used to. And I want before today's subject about how history is stolen, using Joan of Arc as the example. I've always had a long fascination with Joan of Arc, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Now, last night I was a bit bored, so I was doing something I don't normally do, and I started watching, alt media videos. I don't watch any. I'll tell you who I watch. I like Sanity for Sweden. That man Stefan. He's actually my daily news source. He eases me nicely into the day. I like it. I like the way he presents the story. I like his demeanor. He comes across a decent guy, and I love the way he says assholes. So that's my daily news source is Sanity for Sweden. That man Stefan. I like him, and he has a thing like Good News Friday, and he's not Mr. Negative or anything like that. He's just presents it in a very kind of healthy, interesting way. I also watch Paul Joseph Watson because he's kind of good. He can be kind of funny. He makes me laugh too as well. He's got a good funny delivery as well. Very good editing, and it's good information. But that's about it. I reminded myself last night why I watched those shows only. My God, it's a sea of shit out there. There's a whole. Oh, I like Dave Cullen on Computing Forever. Whenever, I like Christian Morris, and whenever Dave Cullen, whenever John Waters makes something, I'll watch that. And the odd thing now and again, but I won't religiously watch anything. That's basically the only thing I watch all the time when they come up is Sanity for Sweden, Dave Cullen, and the other one, Paul Joseph Watson. And then other things I watch are like The Critical Drinker, but I don't watch any of these truther shows. They're horrible, they're poisonous, and they're retarded, most of them. And I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to do that. But there's a couple of shows out there, that are just pushing the doom for the cash. They're creating thumbnails and whipping up the doom for the ad money and the cash and the numbers, and you can see that they're playing to the balconies, as they would say in the old theatre thing. Like suppose there's a threat of nuclear war or something, right? Or it's mentioned. You'll have a thumbnail of himself like this, and a picture of a nuke going off behind him, and the headline will be something like "Nuclear war imminent?" question mark, or no electricity this winter. And it's just so posed, pretending that he's, and then there'll be other videos of like, today I've learned things. It's so fake and so insincere, and it's just done just entirely for the numbers. And there's one other little cunt that I'm not going to name his name, but oh, talk about a punchable face. He's an American guy with a smirk on his face, and he makes predictions every day, and every fucking prediction is wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Russia will invade Poland tomorrow. Tomorrow, Russia invades Poland. Next day, doesn't happen. His new video. There's going to be a nuclear explosion somewhere in the east. A false flag attack somewhere in the east United States. Doesn't happen. And he gets fucking huge hits. And he lies, and he lies, and he lies. And there's another one, an English guy who claims that he has. He's kind of went quiet now because he was making up lies that Hillary Clinton had been arrested and was executed, and that Trump was going to seize power, and his sources in the U.S. government were telling him that Hillary Clinton had been executed, uh, and Trump will be installed as president tonight. And when tonight came, he changed the subject to something else, and people still listen to these wankers. It's unbelievable. So you have to be, and then occasionally someone well-meaning will send me a video saying you have to watch this, and it's one of these assholes. It's one of these assholes. A child could see through their bullshit. They just look for what doom is currently selling, and what doom can I invent, and there's a whole industry of like making these doom predictions of things that never come true. And they're just based on nothing. They don't have document. They'll just nothing. My sources. Anyway, now I've got that out of the way. Though this kind of segues in a little bit into what I want to talk about today. How they own history. Okay. Now, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said if people really knew what happened to Princess Diana, there'd be a revolution. Really? Yeah. I said, you could have Prince Charles on TV, and he's as addressing the English nation, British nation, and going, my father and I arranged the assassination, oh dear, of my late wife, Princess of Wales. And they would all go, the next day, isn't he great? You still underestimate how fucking ridiculous the world is. So, and another one would be like, how, your man Hancock on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. How is he getting away with that? That's his reward, and they're burlesquing you and laughing at you. I was watching it through the night, and why are you watching it? Why are you watching it? Oh, I thought Boy George would say something about Malazalam or something. Look, let me tell you this golden rule, right? If they're a threat to the system, they're dead. It's as simple as that. At any position of power. You are being burlesqued, and they're mocking you and laughing you. And they want you watching the TV going, can you believe this fucker Hancock? After all the old people he killed, he's on the... They want you doing that. The best thing is to information, recognize, move on. Don't absorb it into yourself and be furious and all wired up. That's what they want. Because they own history. And when the history is written, here's something that's going to piss you off. When the history is written, all the things that you know to be true, that Diana was definitely bumped off. No doubt about that. That will be written to say she died in a harmless car crash. It was a terrible tragedy. When the history of this last 2.5 years is written, there was a real pandemic, and all people, millions and millions and millions and millions of people died. And they won't mention anything else. And Hancock's name will go down in the history book as the guy who saved billions of lives. And you can sit there getting angry all you fucking want, but welcome to being a pagan. Because we have to live with that. We've been told, we have people raised we've had countless generations since the birth of Christianity saying that our pagan ancestors were all barbaric monsters who used to kill, and they didn't all love each other like Christians. And even when Christians were killing each other, like in the Confederacy Wars in Ireland, where one half of Ireland was killing the other half of Ireland over conflicts regarding rabbinical texts from the Middle East, it'll never be presented that way. No. Pagans are the problem. Pagans are the problem. And it's still going on. Your man Enoch Burke blaming pagans. What are pagans? Well, show me one pagan that has a position of power in Ireland. None. They're all atheist Bolsheviks. Or else what they are is Catholics or Protestants. None of them are pagans. So anyway, and yet we're still being blamed. We're still being blamed for, no matter what we do, we're being blamed, okay? Let me tell you about Princess Diana. Do you know when the plan for her was hatched to kill her? You know when her assassination plan was hatched? when she was in her mother's womb. Because the plan all along was for Camilla to be queen. That was the plan all along. Diana, but she was too old and she was never going to produce the children that Charles needed. The age gap thing was a problem regarding heirs and spares and, that kind of thing. So she literally was, like she said in that interview on Channel 4 all those years ago, that she was the brood mare of the Windsors. Well, that's exactly what she was. The woman wasn't lying. The woman was not lying. And she, by all accounts, she was a decent human being. Now, when I lived in America, I used to have Americans coming up to me and say, "It's amazing, she's a wonderful person for a commoner." What? And Irish people used to say this before, "Yeah, Princess Diana's a commoner." How do you reckon that? Oh, well, she's not from the royalty. Princess Diana was probably higher up the aristocratic chain than the Queen of England. She grew up in Blenheim Palace, the biggest house in the world. She's from the Dukes of Marlborough, the Churchills. That's the kind of pedigree, as you used to say, she came from. And yet there was this thing put out there that she was like a nanny, a nanny that like hung around Sloane Square looking after babies. No, she grew up in spectacular wealth and luxury. She would have, when she married Charles, that would have been probably down to her, marrying down. But these people see that they own history. So the story now is of a commoner who was killed in a car crash, in an accident, and it was just unfortunate. And that's how the history books are written. Of course, there'll be people in the future like us who'll be going, "Oh, this doesn't make a lot of sense," and they will investigate. A historical example of this is Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc has been a great source of inspiration for me. To me, Joan of Arc is the ultimate feminist. Now, Joan of Arc was born in the northeast of France. I think it might have been Rouen. Maybe, no, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Where she was born in the northeast of France, a very pagan area, even well into Christianity. Okay, she claimed she received visions, and the visions were initially she told the King of France that she was being led by Saint Michael, the archangel, and she would help liberate that part of France from the English. Okay, and the King of King of France was so taken with her and so impressed with the woman, a peasant girl, that he said, "Okay, you can lead the army." And she had such a rapport with her troops, and she had such a command of the army that they defeated the English and broke the siege of Orleans, which was considered impossible to break. And because the English were considered, formidable and undefeatable at that time. They had incredible military force. The siege of Orleans was broken. She de-Christianized her army and gave them back the old faith. She ran that army in a pagan style. She was a pagan. Saint Joan was a pagan. Her army were pagans. And the reason why they were so phenomenal fighting against the English, the sudden change in the army, was she told them that they would be reincarnated, they would be born again, they would see their families again, that dying for France was not a futile sacrifice, and they would probably go to some heaven, as they call it, a sky kibbutz, space kibbutz. She gave them guarantees of being reborn. She often demonstrated magical powers around her troops. She would have shamanic visions. These shamanic visions would tell her how to attack the English flank, what troops to use, what day to do it on, and so on. She told the kings and she told the bishops it was Saint Michael. It wasn't. It was an ancient folk spirit that was telling. She was channeling. She was a shaman. So anyway, she became so powerful in France that she was literally seen as a living god, a living goddess. They had the French believed with Saint Joan in their midst. They were going into battle next to Athena. They were going back into battle next to Boudica. They were going into, and that's what Buddha's secret as well. It was the shamanic thing, going into battle with the Morrigan, going into battle with Freya. She gave them back their old, and this was all written down during her trial, that she created heresies by giving back the French soldiers the old faith, because she was raised in a part of France that was left over from the Normans that didn't particularly adapt to Christianity. You have to remember, when the Normans crossed over into England, they were still pagan. They were still pagans at the Battle of Hastings. And so this is why portents like comets in the sky, Halley's Comet appearing in the sky, was so important to the Norman victory. They understood the auguries. And that was the gods in space saying, now it's time to move across the English Channel. And St. Joan did the same thing. She ran the French army like the Roman pagan armies. And she gave her army back their old gods, their old faith, and their old religion, and was incredibly successful and loved throughout France, except in one place. Yes, our good old friends, the bishops. The bishops were increasingly nervous. Bishop comes from the term, is literally translated from rabbi. Okay, always remember that. This is a Jewish religion you're dealing with. I'm not putting down Jews, I'm just telling you. If you're a Christian right now watching this, you should be very proud of your Jewish heritage, because you're worshipping a Jewish religion. And you can sit there saying, oh, it's not that, it isn't that, it's not that. No, it is that, okay? It is that. Deal with it, okay? Deal with it. And but don't be telling me you're more Irish than me because your God is a Jewish rabbi, a rabbi zombie from Palestine. No, my gods are Irish. That's the difference in me and you. And so anyway, yeah. So the bishops got jealous, and they decided that they were jealous of her power over the army. And you had chaplains in the army who were pissed off that she had given the soldiers back the old religion. And this is only the 1400s now, early 1400s. And it's not that long ago, really, when you think about it. And so they charged her with heresy. And do you know what took her down? Do you know what the difference, what the final thing to burn her on the stake was? She told them that the messages were not coming from Saint Michael, the archangel. They were coming from the fairies. That she was working with the fairies to defeat the English. Now, that's a famous thing all through Irish history, of the fairy armies going to war with the regular army. That the humans would recruit the fairy. There's a phenomenal painting in the National Gallery of Ireland, an unbelievable watercolor of stunning detail, and it's entitled "The Fairy Army Goes to War with the O'Neills" or something like that. But it's a fairy army going to war in the sort of like the Renaissance era in Ireland with the Irish troops. And she was doing that with the French troops. And this is where she was getting her espionage from. She said the fairies were telling her where the weak spots in the British siege were. The fairies were telling me what troops to use where. And that was what sent her to the gallows, or sent her to the stake. Now, what happens then? You think, okay, did they write her out of history? No, of course they couldn't write out of history, because the English were they knew the English were writing their history up and saying, in France we were defeated by this young peasant girl they used to call her Jean, the English, but Saint Jean of Arc, and it became Joan of Arc later. That's another kind of interesting twist in the tale. But so the French couldn't write her out of history, because the English were writing up about this incredible military leader in France that defeated them. And she was a woman, a peasant girl, only a young girl. And so they couldn't do that. So what they did was they remade her as a saint. And she became the patron saint of France, Saint Joan of Arc. And that was how the church spun it around, that she was burned on the stake by English spies. They spun it all kinds of ways. They said that it was a mistake. And in the movie version with Ingrid Bergman, at the very end, so that's a very lovely version in the film as well. And I think that because Ingmar Bergman was Swedish, she brought a kind of a pagan's beauty and a goddess sensibility to the role. But as she's dying and she's going to Jesus, of course, they played a Christian angle. An English soldier, they're trying to make out the English born there, falls to his feet weeping, and he goes, "Forgive me," to the priest. He lands, "Forgive me, Father, I murdered a saint." So you see, they've all history. She was not a Christian leader. She was a pagan warrior. She led a pagan army that defeated the Christian English. And the bishops in France, jealous of this, worried about this, rewrote the history to turn her not only into a saint, but the patron saint of France, Saint Joan of Arc. Now, she was a fascinating woman. She was like the ultimate feminist. But what did she do to go into battle? She was a shaman. She was like the warriors of old. Like, in the pagan times, the Roman general who was worried about something would go on a sabbatical into the woods, and he would wait for inspiration from the gods. You know, and it would come. The Greeks would do that. Alexander would do that. The ancient Celtic guys would do it. Boudica would have done it, and they would have got guidance. But that was what led her to the stake. She said that she wasn't working with St. Michael. She said that because otherwise the King of France wouldn't have believed her, would have laughed at her. She said that she was working with the fairies. Now, isn't that something? You can go and read all. If you don't believe me, go into some incredible biographies out there about it. But that's why Saint Joan and Joan of Arc is such a powerful, inspirational figure in so many people's lives to this day, including me. I have a tremendous affinity with Joan, and she probably was the last great pagan martyr. I think about 1430 something, early 30s, she was put to the stake. But if you go to like a lot of France, even though she's the patron saint of France, there's not a lot of churches and stuff venerated to her. Like, of course, Notre Dame Cathedral is to the Virgin Mary, and we know that's built on a pagan site anyway. But like a lot of the churches are venerating to Saint Denis, Saint Denis, who was a Christian saint who was beheaded. It's sort of a Saint Sebastian. Every country has the story of a saint who was killed by the pagans or killed by the other side or by the Moors or something. And it's Saint Denis, and you often see him holding his head in his under his arm in the statues. But that's where the story, the headless, the ghost, where the ghost walks around with the head under his arm. Remember in Rent a Ghost, that old TV show? Well, that comes from Saint Denis. But yeah, so Joan of Arc, top gal, pagan hero, and a perfect example of how they wreck history. There you go. And don't be watching those negative fucking lying fucking truth or speculator bullshit news stories. They're designed to keep you trapped in doom.